Frieder Hochheim. Do I pronounce it correctly?
I'll take it. I'll take it from here.
You take it. Okay,
Yeah.
you introduce yourself.
I'm Frieder Hochheim. I'm the founder of Kino Flo Lighting Systems, founded in 1987. I studied film at Ryerson University, now called Toronto Metropolitan University in Toronto. Been involved in film and photography since the age of 5. And I love the moving image.
Thank you. And we are so delighted to be here with you and doing this interview as the first one to kick in our Hollywood series, going behind the headlines and seeing who are these people who are really making this town tick. All the space that's here. Okay.
So this was a scene done for Mission Impossible 2. This guy right here is giving you scale. So this was done at LAX, in one of the largest aircraft hangars. Tom jumps out from way at the top into an airbag. That was about 80 feet tall. And so this is one of the big shots that they did.
Nothing happens without you guys, that's for sure.
True.
So, Frieder, so you actually came to Hollywood via Canada, that you were born in Canada, but you have a German stock. What was the first memory that you have that you really fell in love with all the gadgets and the movies?
Well, so conceived in Germany, born in Canada, moved here in '83. I've always had a fascination with photography. So my father was a lithographer, and we had our own darkroom. So I was, since the age of, 7 or 8, I was in the darkroom developing pictures. What could be more fun than getting that picture to move? So going from still photography in the darkroom to 8mm was obviously a natural progression. Loved making my own little movies as a kid, and decided, in life you have choices to make, and if you're going to work, why not combine a hobby with a vocation? Nothing better than waking up in the morning and feeling invigorated to go to work. In the end, that's where it ended up.
And as all the good Hollywood stories start with, it's in the garage. And so we have a piece from your garage right here. So can you tell us, with this interesting stuff, how did you come up with this concept?
So it all starts very simply. As filmmakers, we're problem solvers. Every time the camera moves, you're solving the next problem. And I was starting a Dennis Hopper picture with Chuck Minsky, ASC. And this was in West Virginia. And he goes, it'd be really nice if you could just take a fluorescent, take all the guts out, and just put it in a foam block and just double stick it to the ceiling. My best boy and I at the time ran to the hardware store, put something together, slapped it up in the ceiling, plugged it in. Didn't work at all. It was a complete failure. But that idea stuck with me. At the time, there was a company called Magnatech that was working for Xerox. At the time that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were nosing around in Xerox, I happened to be there at the same time, but this time it was a fluorescent ballast for a copy machine, and the fluorescent ballast had to be a high frequency ballast because it was scanning an image, and you couldn't have a fluctuating light level. And I got the name of this company that was making the ballast, and I thought, high frequency, no flicker, I gotta try this. Called them up, I'm this guy in Hollywood, I've got this idea. And they went, oh, Hollywood, cool, yeah, we'll send you a ballast. And lo and behold, the damn thing worked. This one is broken, but it's sort of the oldest piece that we still have. Again, all of this came together for very practical reasons. And so I wanted to be able to control the light in some way, shape, or form. I needed to be able to articulate the doors to increase or decrease the light level. I needed a place that I could attach other things to. And short of spit and baling wire, it sort of came together. So this here's our production floor. Right over here we've got some Diva Light 41s. LED product. It has a nice broad light projection, so it has a beautiful wraparound. So when it comes for trying to do those cosmetic lights for the face, you want something that's broad and has a nice wrap. Right. So this really does it.
Is that why it's called Viva Light?
It's all about looking good.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
And when you look good, you feel good.
Yes, and the audience feels good about it too.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
can you tell us the progression from your garage, like figuring out a solution? How did you move from there to more sophisticated solutions? How long did it take you? And who was your partner that you worked with?
Yeah. So all of this came together between Gary Swink and myself. Gary Swink was my best boy. The very first picture we shot with these was Barfly with Robbie Miller as the cinematographer. And he was very brave to go ahead and say, we're going to do it all with these fluorescents. It was born of necessity where you had a set on location, wide lenses, small rooms, and you're shooting into windows, and you saw the entire set. You saw the floor, the walls, the ceiling. And you go, where the hell do you hide a light? And so the fluorescent lent itself well to that. So we were able to hide it in corners and do things like that. The biggest problem we had initially was, of course, that the fluorescent tube in and of itself was not necessarily color correct. We had to come up with a better solution than just gel. And so this is where Kodak came into the picture. So there was a senior scientist at Kodak. I reached out to him, said, here, this is my challenge. I'm trying to match a spectrum to film stock. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what I got. I've got this spectrometer that I developed where it has all the spectral response curves of film, and I can look at any light source and tell you what you need to do to correct it. And so this started the back and forth. I'm not an engineer, but I can give direction to engineers and say, here, this is the goal, how do I get there? So it was a fair bit of back and forth, but in the end, I would come out with these samples, run down to Kodak and go, here it is. And lo and behold, we nailed it. So the first one was a daylight tube, then we did a 3200 Kelvin tube, followed later on by 2900 because so much of incandescent light is actually much warmer than 32. And that put us on the path of now having a soft light and a cosmetic light that did not need color correction. We're doing some QC. This is a burn-in, the Light 21s. So we try to get about 8 to 10 hours of burn-in time on all the units. We find that usually sort of takes care of infant mortality of components. But more importantly, here we record the spectrum of each of the units. What we're showing is basically we've got our two whites over here and our red, green, and blue. So we can really see the fuller spectrum that the white affords. The camera sees it as a full spectrum, which is the important thing. Our whole spectrum was designed around the camera response. You want to make sure that the camera see as true to nature, be it daylight or tungsten, and that it also reproduces wardrobe, makeup, hair, that those reflect back accurately to camera. It's just got to work. It's got to work right.
Working with the directors and cinematographers, how did you see the things evolve in cinema? This is an exciting time, late 70s, 80s.
So I came to Hollywood in 1983. And so at that time, there were some major advances in motion picture technology, let's say. Number one, lenses were getting very fast. You could now shoot wide open, 0.9 aperture settings. You had smaller cameras, a lot more handheld. The film stocks were getting much faster. Instead of having a big studio camera on location, now you're working with much smaller cameras. You're now going into locations that were much smaller. They were facilitating a style of shooting that we had not really been able to do before. So I started Kino Flo in '87. And so the use of soft light, lightweight, the idea was that it should be like replicate a bounce card. With a fluorescent lamp, we're able to strap it to that same bounce card and now use it as the light source. This really freed up a lot of space. So on a picture like Barfly, which was all location shooting, very small, tight interiors, wide lenses, shooting into windows, and now you're trying to balance interior to exterior, huge challenges, and still maintain this integrity of light. Working with Robbie, he said, we have to really take our time on this. What I don't want to do is draw attention to the light. The minute we do that, we lose the narrative. You want to maintain the audience's total absorption in the narrative. And if you get too fancy and draw attention to yourself, you're defeating the whole purpose. This was also at a time where there was a much stronger move to try to be as natural as possible with the light. On the set of Barfly, which was really the first film where we used a lot of kinos, Bob Richardson came by, Theo von der Sonde, ASC, came by. We even had interesting guests because of Bukowski. David Bowie.
Oh,
David Bowie shows up. What the hell is David Bowie doing on our set?
I know.
He loved Bukowski. And so, okay, so Bukowski had friends just drop in. I'm doing a movie. Come on by and check it out. So it was just number one, a lot of fun, but we're also this enthusiasm for breaking new ground, doing things aesthetically we had never been able to achieve before, and having an integrity of light that was true to nature.
You know, you were fortunate to really work with great people and to test some of the stuff with fantastic filmmakers and artists. Walk us through the whole process of like moving from just being on the set and here is a company. How did that happen?
So moving from being on the set all the time to actually becoming a manufacturer, that was a transition. It took time. And I had made the decision at that point, I've got to concentrate on, I now had, I think it was up to 12 employees or something, and I just couldn't go away for 8 to 12 weeks on a picture anymore. But again, when you have an idea and you see that an industry is responding to it, it motivates you to do more. And so all of this started essentially with a small tube. And from there it was, well, okay, how big can we go? How small can we go? It enabled us to come up with all these little solutions, battery solutions, and all of them had to be high frequency because they shouldn't flicker. This was the other big thing. You never know, 24 frames a second, great. Yeah. But then suddenly the director goes, you know what, yeah, so we're going into a fight scene. We need to be able to shoot this at a higher frame rate, and we can't flicker. And we don't want to stay within certain windows. And by the way, we're saving huge amounts of energy. When we started the company, we were energy saving when nobody wanted to hear about it. There were all these different applications. At one point, we built giant walls of fluorescent panels that were dimmable. Oh. And these were used for backlighting huge trans lights. So we had a broad range of products that all came out of this. And this, of course, later now translated into everything we're doing in LED. We basically had done already in the fluorescent world.
Right.
The irony to the fluorescent was a lot of what we'd done in the fluorescent world had already been done back in 1909 with a Cooper Hewitt mercury discharge lamp, which was the precursor to the fluorescent. So when you follow the progression of technologies, we started in 1927, GE made the first fluorescent bulb. In 57, it started being commercialized. So that was a good 30-year span right there for it to be commercialized. CBS Studios in New York, in black and white television, for a while used fluorescence to light. Then color came, and that totally killed the fluorescent there. And then in 87, I come along and go, it's not working for film the way it is. Let's make it, let's get the green out of it and make it full spectrum. So that's a huge span of time for a technology to mature. If you look at the LED, on the other hand, that period of time was much more compressed. And there's a representation on the wall of all the fluorescent tubes, all the various types of tubes that we used to make. So there was a range of lamps and lamp types, all of which has essentially disappeared now. So we've gone through a technology wave, and this is now history. This is what you'll find nowadays on a set. This is a refurbished fluorescent using the same housing that we had in the fluorescent, except now it's all LED. This is full color. We have tubes based on a fluorescent tube, but now these are all LED. And I'll just turn it down so it doesn't blow the camera out. And you can go through various Kelvin temperatures on this. And then the latest is what we're coming out with next, which is the Celeb Icon 6. And we also have a 12, which is twice the size. This is going to be a very, very bright light. It's also IP65, meaning you can stick it in the rain. So this is that's a big deal. The fact that you can go outdoors in the rain with it.
Yeah, I love that you look back to history, and I see a lot of history behind you on this wall. You're a collector of these beautiful devices from the past. So what does this do for you? And when did you start collecting?
Okay, so I loved cinema. I went to school. I studied history. So much of our visual language has formed over the last 130 years. The cinema has defined how we see the world, how we experience so much of the world. Lighting and the recording technology always were hand in hand. They had to work together, otherwise there was no image. If you look at the early Chaplin films, soft light. The Cooper Hewitt lamp, because it was blue-green, the film was orthochromatic, only sensitive to blue-green light, perfectly harmonized. So on the early Chaplin films, the early films were either shot outside or shot interior. So you either had a hard light, now you also had a soft light. Moving that forward, as the film stocks went into panchromatic, the Cooper Hewitts no longer worked because they were blue-green light. Yeah. So now it was incandescent. And now you had to now try to take a bright source and harness that. So all the lighting design that came out of it was designed about trying to shape a point source into something that was broader and softer. And again, the aesthetic of on a face was still, you wanted soft light on faces, or you wanted to have your key light in such a position that you minimized any kind of lines that would age an actor. And so you ended up with these lighting styles that were very much driven by the amount of light you had to have. So here you actually see Cooper Hewitts, and those are carbon arcs up there. And this was in Paris, a studio in Paris, turn of the century, 1909, around there.
Oh.
It was around 1909. This is also the Weston meter. That's the one meter that Robbie always had. So no matter when all his other meters failed, he could still take this out, and because there's no battery or anything, it's just purely light. And so this was sort of the fallback. So this is, you can actually see
Thomas Edison?
1893. All of this goes back to 1893. So yeah, so the history goes back very, 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 very far back.
There were other people who were working, I mean, many people working in movies and lighting the sets. Not everybody came up with the ideas that you did, and even fewer would come up with a company. What is the explanation? What is the key to your success? It's a scary move to go into business.
So motivation for starting Kino Flo was very simple. Having a family. Okay, I don't want to be on the road 8 to 12 weeks at a time. The next thing that I thought was very important for me is understanding my own limitations. As a rule, have always tried to surround myself with people who know a lot more than I do. I feel I'm more of a instigator, a conductor, a motivator. I know where I want to go. I don't necessarily know how to get there, but I bet there are people out there that know how to get there and can help me out. I also had an industry that was enthusiastic about what I was doing, and were also very patient. We had a lot of challenges. I was blessed by having Ray Goitendia, who had graduated USC business, also marketing. So I had business and marketing experience that came into the company. Gary Swink, my best boy, was also trained in theater and theater lighting. Very much a very strong engineering mind. And after that, it's, okay, we need engineers. Well, let's bring in some engineers. So between just surrounding myself with the right people and having the motivation to take it, how far can we take this thing? And having an industry that was responsive to it. I mean, it would have all died if the industry went, not interested. Our rental department is an important component of what we do here, because productions don't always have capital budgets to buy everything that they need, yet they have rental departments. Every studio has a set lighting department, and so we work directly with the set lighting department and provide them whatever gear is necessary. After a year or two of renting certain items, they do review what's been renting what they've rented the most of, and then decide to go ahead and make those purchases. And so once a year, they'll get a capital budget, and then they'll do their allocation of where they feel it's best suited for their perspective.
You know, you've been responding to industry needs, so to speak, in a way that was always innovative and offering something that people say, yes, I would love to work with this. Where do you see your work, technology, and movies today and Kino Flo? We're seeing a segmentation of the visual industry to high-end feature films. You've got streaming. You've got all these different sectors now that have different technology requirements. What drives me is seeing where's the next challenge. At the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers, we had a meeting with Lux Machina, who came in and talked about the challenges they have in virtual production. We're trying to recreate nature in a totally artificial environment. Right. How do we best do that? One of my chief engineers said, why don't we actually just make a video tile that is a lighting tile? The fact that the electronic cinema cameras have distinct spectral response curves allows us to harmonize these two technologies and bring them together. So bottom line is we created a light source that, instead of having
12 or so pixels, we had 7,200 pixels. It was a giant panel. It was a video image that projected a full spectrum image. You can go 900 frames a second on this thing. We wanted to make it lightweight. Let's do it in carbon fiber. And we found the right partners in the industry who shared our vision. So again, what motivates me is seeing where there's a challenge, and then how do I take technology and now modify it, mold it in a manner that actually resolves the challenge that we have. That's where our new direction is coming from. So this year is the Mimic. So 7,200 pixels. It's made of carbon fiber, so very lightweight. It's quite a revolution. So the visual effects people have dreamt of this, and now we have it. And so now it's a matter of training sufficient personnel that are comfortable with implementing these on location or in the studio.
A few words about the virtual production and virtual reality and augmented reality and AI. I mean, it's all the rage these days. The sophistication of the technology is such that it poses different challenges for our old-fashioned human brains. So how do you bridge that difference? Can our brains catch up with technology?
When it comes to motion picture, you still need a good story. So starting there, you need to totally be able to absorb that attention and drive it into the story. We have a convergence of technologies that is coming together. AI is just a facilitator of doing tedious tasks in a more efficient manner. AI is not going to replace our creativity, but this convergence of technologies and this rapid convergence is allowing us to do things which we, up until recently, could only have imagined. And after that, it becomes our own aesthetic eye. How far can I push this to be fully convincing that this is natural, that you cannot see that this is faked out? And so when it comes to what we're doing with image-based lighting, we're really trying to create an environment of light as if you were on location. And so understanding that connection between the physics of light, being on that location, understanding what the light quality was on that day, because you now have this plate that you're trying to match to. And this is where a good understanding of a bit of physics, you don't have to be a physicist, but just be an observer, be an astute observer of what it is to be on that location. And now harness the technology in a manner that hides the fact that you're using technology. Make them believe that you're on location. Now, these just finished on a picture that is yet to be released with a Matthew McConaughey film. The scene was a bus driving through a firestorm, a forest fire with a bunch of kids on board. This was all on fire. That bus was on fire, and the guys working on the set called me up and said, "You won't believe, this thing looks amazing." I think if it's done right, you can fake out anything nowadays. Again, it all depends on how astute it's executed. Our visual acuity when it comes to looking at motion pictures, we've developed a very high level of sophistication of understanding what is sort of fake and what isn't. And that is something that has evolved over the years and learned. I'll give you an example. When my twin boys were all of 4 or 5 years old, I showed them the original King Kong. They were riveted. They did not move. Their eyes were glued to the screen. They experienced that film as the first audiences would have seen it back then. Course. And just observing them see the film, to me, was a whole revelation of how much of an impact our visual history, of the motion picture history, has impacted our, what do you want to call it, socialization of processing images. We've absorbed that language. Right. It's a visual language.
Oh yeah.
We understand it. With LEDs, we're limited because it's a surface area that gets to a certain brightness and it has to be heat sunk, and it has limitations. With a laser diode, though, it can be very intense and very focused. So the challenge we have at this point with laser diodes is that the color spectrum is just not adequate. So that's where the work has to happen.
So you think laser?
I think it's looking promising. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but knowing where the technologies are at, I think there appear to be some opportunities there that haven't really been exploited yet, and that we should start scratching the surface of where that technology can take us.
But how about the uncanny valley? Animation has gotten to be also the perfection in animation. When it gets too perfect, the human eye rejects it. We need to not have people as a passive absorbers of culture, of any technology, but we sort of dull our ingenuity, our own imagination. So can you address that?
Well, every day we see great scenes, great images, none of which are perfect. And we actually strive for this when we're doing some of these visual effects, is that there has to be a level of imperfection, meaning that shadow can be there, that shadow can be dark. And I think this is one of the things that I learned from Robbie Mueller. I mean, you can compose the perfect shot, but then fuck it up a bit.
Yeah.
Edge it
Yes,
off.
you have to. Yeah.
And that was one of the things that was so wonderful about the accidents that happen and that actually become their own aesthetic. For example, the element of green and fluorescence. You're shooting outside and you get that green from fluorescent. Oh, that's great. Well, in Hollywood, we corrected that. We went to great lengths to take the green out of everything. Yet along comes Wim Wenders with Robbie Mueller as the cinematographer, and they have absolutely no budget, and they wait for the right moment, and they grab the shot. It's magic hour. It's what, and all these vibrant colors suddenly come out at you, and you go, how did they do it? And you ask and go, we didn't know. We recorded what was there. And The American Friend, a scene where Dennis Hopper walks across a window. It's late afternoon, dusk, heavy overcast. Inside, you know that they've lit it with daylight, and he walks over to a pool table that's lit by a fluorescent, and he lies down on the pool table and takes the Polaroid camera and starts taking pictures of himself. He is lime green, and yet they embraced it. And I think it's this embrace of an error, what anyone else would consider an error.
Right.
And here it became an aesthetic, don't
An
fight
aesthetic
it,
choice,
embrace
yes,
it.
exactly.
And after that it became, that's the look.
That is.
So this is how technology can influence aesthetics, and we accept it, and we understand it, and we build upon it.
Well, I think it's a great note to end a conversation on that, how the technology and aesthetics can really live in harmony and embrace each other. I don't want to spoil this moment right now, so thank you so much, Frieder. I'm just waiting now to see what's next. What's next coming up from this shop?
You wouldn't believe it.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a total pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Kino Flo. Thank you so much. We all know the bigger story about the movies, but it's really these little things and people like you and who were over the years and over the decades coming up with different solutions to the problems.
Thank you for coming down and wanting to listen to some of these stories. Again, a lot of this has just come out of passion. I have a passion for films, I have a passion for light, and I have a passion for working with creative people.
It really does come together in a package. And I think that's what reminds us again what we love about movies and what we love about arts. We want to know what's coming next. So call. You call.
I got your number.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
This was wonderful.
Pleasure.
Kino Flo. Yay!
Enjoy.